Hello, everyone. It's Mike Yao with Savage Kingdoms role-playing game and Fire in the Head Productions. So, wanted to do another video. I did one, I don't know, about a week ago about talents, about the talents game mechanic of Savage Kingdoms 3rd Edition. And real quick note about that: Savage Kingdoms role-playing game 3rd Edition core rulebook. Oh, that's really long. The SK3 core rulebook is actually at the printers right now with the files. The PDF has already been done. It's already gone out to the appropriate Indiegogo contributors, and right now it's sort of stuck, log jammed, as it were, at the printers. So due to COVID, I think, so they're only like half staff there. They seem to be backlogged and moving pretty slowly, but they'll get to it, and God bless them. And so yeah, so hopefully that will be out to the contributors in the next. We should still be able to make the August deadline, though. I would think, and then it'll be up for sale immediately right after. Hopefully at the end of August, I guess, or mid-August, hopefully. But you know, so yeah, a little note about that. So the last video I did was about talents. Talents is one of the building blocks of character creation in Savage Kingdoms. You have your attributes, your 6 main attributes, and then you have talents, which are kind of like feats or class features for those of you more used to, say, Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder. Weaknesses are kind of the almost the opposite of strengths, hence the terminology. They give you bonus points to spend on extra. Well, first of all, they give you cool role playing things, the main thing, but mechanically, they give you some bonus points for towards talents or towards skills, which is what this video is about. The skills of Savage Kingdoms 3rd Edition. I'm going to try to do this video shorter than I have been, making a concerted effort at doing shorter ones. So I'm only going to cover half the skills, and then I'll do a part 2, the second half of the skills. I think that's how I'm going to do this. I'm also testing some new lighting and sound and that kind of stuff. So yeah, so hopefully this doesn't look quite as bad as normal. All right, so the skills in Savage Kingdoms, 3rd edition, you might ask. Firstly, there are 28, I believe they're 28 skills and SK3. Or is it 27? Maybe 27. Anyways, 27 or 28. In Savage Kingdoms Reforged, there were 30. And I think the 1st edition was also 30. I think it was pretty much the same. So we pared a few skills down. We either pared them down or married them into or folded them into other skills. For example, there used to be a riding skill, riding as in to ride a beast, an animal, or a chariot, or a wagon. That has now been folded into animal handling. I kind of debated on it back and forth, but eventually I've kind of relented. And because the cool thing about Savage Kingdom's skill system, one of the cool things I think is that you could specialize in skills. For every 3 skill levels you have in a skill, you get to specialize. So if you had 3 skill levels in animal handling, you could choose riding as a specialty, or or horses or camels or a specific type of chariot riding or something like that. Yeah, so that the system allows you to do that. So that allows you to like make some of the minor skills kind of fold into some of the more major skills. Another skill that got sort of folded into 2 skills that got kind of folded into others would be climbing and swimming. They used to be their own skill. Now they're in a broad skill called athletics. Athletics skill didn't even exist before. It did cover climbing and swimming and other things, but now it still does so. But also would consider it would also cover more some of the cultures in Savage Kingdoms, like the Pridonians have these kind of and the northern cultures too, but when there's particularly warriors that aren't fighting, they do. This is where a lot the origin of a lot of sports came from. Anyway, was during your off time, in order to keep in shape and to kind of still have some competition and manly stuff going on, you you develop sports like hurley and even soccer eventually, and or you threw javelins, who could throw it the farthest, who could run sprint the quickest up and down the beach or up over the mountain, or who could ski the fastest or ride the horse the fastest. So athletic skill could actually cover like traditional sort of athletics as we know them in the modern sense as well. Let's see, what's the other? There's one more skill I think they got folded or knocked off entirely. And maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. Maybe if I come to another one in the list, I'll let you know. But I think that's pretty much it. Okay, so now here's the first half of the skill list, and then I'll actually kind of mention a little bit more detail about what each skill represents or means. Most of it's probably like by the title would be fairly obvious, but sometimes it's not so obvious how that skill applies into actual gameplay in a sword and sorcery quasi-medieval fantasy setting. So, so here we go. The first skill is. You think I would be better prepared? Um, Going from memory. No, not really. I'm actually looking up. First skill, alphabetical order, is acrobatics. So acrobatics is based on agility. Now, in the Savage Kingdoms 3 core rule book, each skill takes up sometimes a half a page to a page and a half, depending on the skill, like alchemy and herbalism, because there's a lot of cool stuff you can do. So, and each write-up of the skill, each entry, as I like to call them, gives you whether there's an armor penalty, like if you're wearing armor. If you look at the character sheet, any skill that has an asterisk next to it means that there's an armor penalty involved because armor is just going to be a little too bulky. Acrobatics is one of those. And then the specialties of acrobatics are jumping, balancing, tumbling, juggling, contortions, bull dancing, forest, desert, snow, etc. Note that you cannot take dodging as a acrobatic specialist; it's just too broad. So it comes up too often using it as for your dodge defense. So that's a no-no. You might could get the game master to, and I almost decided to do this as far as a core rule, to maybe say dodging missiles and dodging and melee dodge maybe could be split up enough to be specialties. But I still would leave that alone, which is why it's in the rules. But you can do what you want, obviously. And then each skill has typical task and their DLs or difficulty levels. For example, a 1 foot vertical jump or a 5 foot vertical jump, 5 yard standing broad jump. This is acrobatics. Balancing on a 2 inch or wider less surface, such as a thick rope or a narrow branch or something. Tumbling by an opponent in combat, escaping from rope bonds, escaping from iron manacles, stuff like that. So yeah, so each skill has that, and then each skill has listed time required. These are mostly suggestions because a lot of it's common sense, but and then each skill has skill level achievements. So those of you who don't know, every 4 skill levels, or no, at skill level 4, skill level 7, skill level 7, or skill level 10 of a particular skill, you get sort of a bonus thing called a skill level achievement. For example, for acrobatics, skill level 4, you gain +1 bonus to all climbing rolls. So athletics, climbing specifically. Skill level 7, you get +5 to brawling skill rolls. It's assumed that at this point, if you're that acrobatic, you're probably pretty dodgy and possibly pretty decent at fighting. If that's not really your thing. Then also listed critical success suggestions, or you can roll randomly, and critical failures as well. So yeah, each skill is broken down like that. The second skill is alchemy. Alchemy is based on intellect, as you might imagine. The skill involves the general knowledge, identification, and even the manufacturing of alchemical concoctions, such as acids, powders, elixirs, flammables, and most poisons. So, poisons. Yeah, armor penalty, no. Specialties would be things like acids, powders, elixirs, oils, poisons, flammables, potions, metallurgy, etc. The reason these have etc. is that if you come up with a cool one and the GM says, yeah, that's awesome, that ties in with your history and that's actually a good idea, then maybe he or she will allow you to use it. Otherwise, it's best to probably just stick to the ones in the book. Typical tasks in their DLs, list that as usual, anywhere from identify a basic acid to create any of the above without proper equipment. So very difficult to do. And then the cool thing about alchemy is that there's all these concoctions you can make. You can try to make a mild acid. You can make a visceral acid, which is like a really potent one. You can make something called black devil venom if you have the proper ingredients and 8 silver pieces per dose and materials. Black slavka, strong blade poison, ingested poison. Jaya, which is a sleer mixture. Fangs of Zur, sleeping elixir. Maiden's Blood, Pridonian Fire, very popular. Healing Salve, Witch's Spittle. Some really cool stuff like that. So look into alchemy. Alchemy also is very quasi-magical, so don't think chemistry. That's a little too modern. Almost think more like the alchemy, the sorcery type alchemy you see in the original Conan stories are really cool. A lot of the sorcerers are making weird elixirs and things like that, or powders that they throw in Conan's face or people's faces, and they do weird things. So think of alchemy more like that. The next skill is animal handling. Animal handling is based on magnetism. because if you have, a presence about you, particularly a gentle presence, you're probably good at handling animals. Armor penalty, no. This skill involves the general handling, training, and domestication of animals such as horses, mules, camels, dogs, falcons, hawks, oxen, and the like. Note that, all right. So specialties are horses, camels, dogs, falcons, snakes. I think I just said these. Snakes, herding, breeding, healing, etc. It's about healing dogs. Okay, that's kind of weird. Breeding. So yeah, you could specialize not only in different types of animals, but also like maybe a specific category, like breeding animals or training animals or taming them or something like that. Very cool. And then there's the task and DLs, like everything, skill level achievements, critical success, critical failure, etc. Some skills also listed if there's a stamina cost. For example, going back to alchemy, it costs 1 stamina per 2 hours of creating a concoction because it does take a little effort and some sweat, maybe some tears. The next skill is I just found the third one, the skill that got folded. There used to be an appraisal skill, like to appraise the value of objects. It's now been folded into crafting in SK3. So you now can take it as a specialty to appraising various items for what their worth is, and also like how well they're made, if they're exceptional quality or master crafted or whatever. Next skill is brawling. Brawling is based on physique, as you probably can imagine. It might have an argument to be based on agility, and that argument has been addressed because in the Savage East, the next book coming out, there is a talent called Agile Brawler, which allows you to use your agility instead of your physique. This represents some of the Eastern cultures have more like what we would assume are kind of like more traditional martial arts. Um, Things which and often those particularly soft forms are based a little bit more on agility and physique. It's really both probably, but anyway, it gives you the option to use your agility instead of physique if you take that talent. But if you do not have that talent, you're using your physique plus whatever skill levels you take in brawling, of course, which represents actual training. The skill simulates one's knowledge and execution of punches, grapples, throws, kicks, elbow smashes, eye gouges, and other unarmed forms of pugilism and martial arts. Armor penalty, yes, as you would imagine. It's a little harder to spin kick when you're wearing a full scale hauberk or something, or a shield on your back. Typical tasks are anywhere from punching something to people to tripping or disarming without weapons. Time required, like I said, that's a category in all the skills. Maximum damage. Maximum damage brawling is 5 points of health damage. So the most you can ever do with a punch or kick or headbutt or a knee slam or something is 5 points. However, there's a talent called Heavy Hitter, which increases your max damage to, I think, 7. And then a weapon, or no, I think it's 8. And then a weapon like a cestus, which is, a spiked punching gauntlet that gladiators would have often used, increases by 2. So you could actually, between those two, you could actually get your maximum damage up to 10. And then certain races automatically have maximum brawling damage at 10, such as Chinari's claw attack, a Sleer's bite attack, particularly a red Sleer's bite attack. Those are all max damage of 10. So that's pretty good. That's up there with dagger. And daggers in SK are more. I mean, they're daggers. They're more. I think D&D almost describes daggers more like a small, like a poignard, almost like a knife. If you look at really a fighting dagger, like a fairly hefty dagger, almost like a dirk, although a dirk really is probably a short sword. That's what we're talking about in Savage Kingdoms, and that's why the damage is only 5 points less than a short sword maximum. Critical success, critical failure. So next skill we have is crafting. Crafting is based on intellect, as you probably would imagine. There's no armor penalty. Specialties are things like blacksmithing, woodworking, stone cutting, leather working, tailoring, shipbuilding, weaving, parchment making, gem cutting, brewing, cooking, etc. So that answers some people's questions. It's like, I want to build a good cook. What skill is it? It's like, well, it's crafting. And you can specialize in cooking if you have 3 or more skill levels. A caveat to the skill level things, some of you guys probably know this, all 5 of you that are familiar with the game. It's a little knock on the number of video views. Hopefully I'll get some more going on. So those of you, if you're particularly in the human cultures, you get to choose 3 specialties to start with. So that means you could have 0 skill levels in a skill and still have a specialty in it because it's a cultural thing. So that represents the fact that you grew up in that culture and you just, by virtue of being around ships all the time, you might specialize in long ships, even though you really don't have any formal training in sailing. So that's what all that represents. So that's kind of fun. Some of the non-human races, I think, have those options as well. So crafting is based on intellect. Uh, that usually has a stamina cost. I think it's 1 per hour usually. So yeah. The next skill after crafting, and there's a whole list of cool things you can do with crafting, all the difficulty levels, and it's pretty exhaustive. It might actually even be too long, but anyway, it lists all the difficulty levels, the target numbers you need to hit for repairing an exceptional quality object. Create full plate armor, which is really high because it almost doesn't exist. If you're Jorgar, though, the DL is lowered by 5 because they're the only ones that really kind of produce that kind of stuff. Create padded armor, create or repair a spear, a war club, create a longbow or an arrow, stuff like that. Repairing objects, creating special objects like cold iron items, not using forge fire, so it's pretty difficult. Create an object with sildaril, which is star metal, or to silver plate a weapon. So all that's in there. All right. Next skill is disguise. Disguise is based on magnetism. And I did kind of go back and forth with myself, kind of arguingly internal. There was an angel on the shoulder and a devil on the shoulder, and they were kind of arguing with each other. They represent different parts of my psyche. Never mind, you guys know what all that means. I've debated back and forth, these angel and demons, whether to make disguise, fold disguise into performance, because they're based on magnetism, and when you're on disguise, you are in fact performing sort of a way of being a character. But then again, perhaps you're not. Some people just literally just, spies are probably not every spy was a talented actor, and they probably just learned to put shades on and just kind of blend into the environment. In that case, you're not acting at all. You're really trying to blend in with the environment and kind of be nonchalant. So that's why I think it's a separate enough skill, and that's why it is. This skill represents some talent and training in the art of disguise, as well as voice mimicry and general acting ability. After I just said that it wasn't really related. There's no armor penalty. Oh no, it says armor penalty possibly, because unless the armor in question is used as part of the disguise. So you could keep your armor on to make it part of the disguise. Maybe you want to look like a warrior or a particular type of warrior or something like that. Or maybe you're going to use the armor to cover it and make to look like a fatter, broader person or something. So yeah. Specialties, voice mimicry, cross-gender, specific race, specific profession, etc. So those are different types of disguises you could specialize in. Then the difficulty level tasks, skill level achievements, critical success, critical failures. Next skill is endurance. Endurance is based on vigor. Vigor is kind of like your constitution stat. Those of you who are more used to like D&D or something. Vigor, this is the only skill other than life magic and death magic that's actually based on vigor. This skill represents one's ability to resist or withstand pain, hunger, poison, disease, and other effects or environments upon the physical body. Specialties are things like cold resistance, heat resistance, pain tolerance, resist hunger, resist thirst, resist poison, resist disease, shape-shifting, specific climate, or specific terrain. So yeah, so this skill comes up a lot in Savage Kingdoms. Reactionary, like a reactive skill. Sometimes it comes up as an active, but mostly it's reactionary. So it's something, it would be the skill that you roll to resist a poison, like a snake bite, so to resist the poison of the snake, of the venom, or to resist disease if you enter a contagious area, or to resist cold or heat. Resist pain or something under torture or something like that. So these will all be endurance rolls. So as you can see, they're often kind of reactionary to something going on. So they are kind of the equivalent of, say, a Constitution saving throw in like D&D or Pathfinder. Okay, the next skill is healing arts. Healing arts is based on intellect. There is a talent called Healer's Touch, which allows you to use your magnetism instead of your intellect for healing arts skill rolls, because that represents kind of a bedside manner kind of thing, somebody that's like a high magnetism healer. Otherwise, you're using your intellect because there is some smarts involved with knowing a little bit about anatomy and how to stop a wound or how to try to cure a poison or something like that. Specialties are broken bones, chirurgery, which is, a kind of early medieval form of surgery, disease, fresh wounds, old wounds, also known as long-term care, poison, specific creature, etc. So those are some specialty suggestions. Typical tasks and DLs, stuff like that. One thing you can do in healing arts that is treat fresh wounds. Healing magic is pretty rare, as it should be, as I wanted it to be. And even getting health points back just through mundane healing arts is it's there, and that's how you do it is with treat fresh wounds. A lot of people forget that the task takes 10 minutes. I've had several players like, I'm going to go over to so and so and start treating fresh wounds during the middle of a battle, and it's like, all right, well, it's 100 rounds that you're going to be doing that, just so you know. And they're like, oh yeah, right. So it does take 10 minutes because it represents cleaning wounds and stitching, some serious stuff. Applying poultices. It's not just like, here you go, here's the band-aid. And then you heal a number of points equal to one. You want to heal one health point per 2 points of success over DL 15. So say you get a 19, you heal that person 3 health points, which is kind of cool. Get them 3 health points back after 10 minutes of the action. Otherwise, after 15 minutes, wounds are considered old. You're kind of getting scabbed over. There's not as much as you can do. The bleeding is either stopped or the person's bled out. That would be treating old wounds or long-term care. The best you can hope for if you succeed in that is that the person heals twice as fast. And you do have to kind of tend to them. You have to make sure they're fed and watered, and you have to change bandages out every so often. It's not hard coded, but it's something that should be kind of going on, and the GM can kind of make sure that people are doing it. Yeah, and you can also try to treat diseases and poisons as well. It doesn't always have to be through life matter, through like spells. You can try to do it just get old-fashioned way, or at least lessen the effects. The next skill that's really cool is herbalism, alphabetical order as well. Herbalism is based on intellect. Herbalism is kind of like alchemy. You can do some cool stuff. You can make concoctions out of it. You can find herbs in the wild, or even steal them from some noble's garden or something. And you can make deadly nightshade concoctions. You can make dream lotus blossom, juju dust, mistletoe, different things you can do with mistletoe, mandrake brew. Uh, there's different, kind of like in the Conan stories, there's some certain types of lotuses that are lotus. A lot of the lotus plants are kind of semi-magical, like black lotus, also known as death lotus, or blood lotus, or dream lotus. Purple lotus. You can make some really cool stuff out of lotuses, which are pretty rare. White lotus actually is a healing. It's awesome for healing. You can make like red lotus perfume, perhaps. Uh, yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with herbalism. That is based off of intellect. Next skill is language. Language is based on intellect. This skill represents a character's knowledge of linguistics, be it the spoken or written tongue, or any attempt at deciphering an ancient language, or weirdly described a hand. I can't believe I wrote that. Weirdly scribed hand, meaning that. So I know what I meant by that. Was like perhaps you come across a book or scroll or note that's just written in haste, or somebody wasn't a fluent writer of that language. Perhaps they even encoded it, and you have to decrypt it. All these things might warrant a language skill roll up to your game master, or you can call for one yourself and see if he or she agrees. So yeah, there's the different things you can do. So specialties might be things like specific modes of writing, reading, deciphering, foraging, encryption, innuendo. Um, you can specialize in a specific type of language: Druithi, Duergar, Lunashi, Gernic, Giant Tongue, etc. So yeah, and also every 2 skill levels you have in language, you actually know a language. You are fluent in it. So player characters start with their native tongue for free. Obviously, the tongue, the culture that you grew up with, that language. And then if your intellect is -1 or higher, so just a little below average or higher, you get to choose a second language, and that language it's listed in your race and culture section of the book. Has to be from a neighboring realm. And you'll notice that the pattern is that it's not just random. It's they're there for a reason. It's representing neighboring cultures or tribes or kingdoms that your culture probably interacted with growing up. It would be like in our real world, growing up in southern Germany. You're gonna learn to speak French and German. I mean, several people I know from that area, and literally that's the case. I have a couple of Norwegian friends that grew up. They speak Norwegian and also English quite well. So that's kind of what that sort of represents. And then for every 2 skill levels, like I said, in language, like specifically training in language, you can actually choose a more exotic language, something like dragon speech or nether speech or goblin tongue or something like that. So that's language. The next skill in alphabetical order, actually, I think I was going to stop right there. And there's a whole list of languages in the core rulebook. So, yeah, actually, no, I was going to go up to the L's. I'm going to stop at magical arts before I get to magical arts. The next skill in the L's, continuing on in alphabetical order, is lockpicking. Lockpicking is based on agility. Agility based lockpicking it is. Unless you, it says, unless you, this is from the Reforged book, the older book actually. Unless you apprenticed as a locksmith, this skill is largely covert, as learning to open locks without the use of a key is not exactly legal activity in most realms. In addition to picking locks, the skill also represents simple trap, disarming, dismantling simple to compact objects. I went from English to Irish there for no apparent reason. So, like I just said, so lockpicking is because it is fairly specific. It also represents things that are similar to that, like disabling the bolts of or hinges of a door or a chest, or a wagon wheel. Maybe you can sabotage a wagon wheel of a enemy noble or something like that. And then there's actual lock picking, of course, and but also disarming or bypassing small traps. Now, things like big mechanical traps are really rare in this setting, but if you do find one like the Dorgar sometimes make them, that's lockpicking is probably beyond that skill. That's probably comes to crafting, engineering specialty at that point. But small, simple traps would be lockpicking to disarm, and like traps in the wilderness, like snares and that kind of stuff. So, in essence, lockpicking covers not only locks themselves proper, but also small traps and sabotaging little small items. And that's based on agility. So specialties are padlocks, bolt locks, doors, chests, gear locks, magical locks, traps, etc. No armor penalty. All right, the last skill for this video is lore. Lore is based on intellect. As you might imagine, this skill is a general knowledge-based skill, either gained through formal training and education or by picking up bits of lore in one's journey through life. No armor penalty, obviously. Either you know something you don't, doesn't matter what you're wearing. Specialties are arcane, religion, history, folk, heraldry, nobility, military, subterranean, runes, demons, dragons, traps, songs, specific culture, specific realm, geography, etc. Geography. Yeah, and there you could probably come up with some other things. And it lists the DLs from anything from basic overall knowledge of a somewhat common subject all the way up to identify an obscure or a legendary enchanted item, identify its history and powers, like specifically what it does. That can go all the way up to like difficulty level 35. Yeah, and then it talks about you might get some if you go to a library, like say a temple's library that's very extensive. You might get a +2, +3 bonus for lore rolls in there if you spend enough time. So yeah, it kind of goes over cool stuff like that. So, all right, well this takes us up to lore. That's roughly halfway through the skill list of Savage Kingdoms. I'll do a part 2, probably next week. I have another RPG camp starting tomorrow. I'm doing this video on a Sunday. It starts tomorrow, Monday, and runs through Friday, so I won't really have as much time to do videos and other stuff. So once again, running a RPG camp with some awesome kids. They seem to prefer Savage Kingdoms over Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, so I'll just keep running. As much as I like D&D 5, I'll keep running Savage Kingdoms. They seem to be preferring it, and we're playtesting a science fiction game. A little secret right there that I'm calling Savage Stars right now, but it probably won't be. It'll probably be called Star Quest, but we'll see. Savage Stars is kind of what we're calling it, and we're going to be playtesting that during the week, so that should be pretty fun. But that's neither here nor there. So thanks for paying attention, and hopefully you got to this video and maybe learned a few things. I'll do part 2. I'll go from magical arts all the way to weaponry ranged will be the next video. In the meantime, stay cool, stay sane, and I'll talk to you all later on.